Okay, welcome again. This is the lecture about the second estate. Okay, you remember the three estates, don't you? Those who pray, those who fight, and those who work. So today we talk about those who fight. But perhaps it's better to think of them as those who rule. Okay, really, the second estate is the natural ruling class of Europe. Okay, kings, dukes, counts, and other landowners. Okay, they're people who own the land and have peasants working for them. And they're not like you and me. Okay, they're a cut above us. They are aristocrats. They have special privileges. It is naturally assumed that they have the right to rule and have the right by birth. Now, but it's appropriate to say those who fight because it is expected that these people will be training full time in various martial arts. That's just what you're expected to do as a member of this estate. If we think of it in terms of those who fight, though, you immediately exclude half of the population of this estate, and that is women. Okay, there are noble women, obviously. These people do not train to fight, but they are fully members of the second estate. Um, they, they run their husband's property while their husbands are away fighting. And obviously, they are important in terms of marriage alliances and intervening with the king for various reasons. Okay, so just because we're talking about those who fight doesn't mean we're trying to exclude women. Although fighting is a very important activity. Okay, now here's a little compare and contrast. All right, on the left we've got a Roman equestrian statue. Okay, now ignore the fact that he's buck naked. That's just an artistic convention. All right, a real Roman would not go around like that. On the right, you have that's a medieval embroidery. In fact, it's from the Bayeux Tapestry. All right, and so it shows military technology as it existed in the late 11th century. And this guy does get some clothing. In fact, he gets a coat of mail. All right. But more to the point, he has some equipment that the Roman doesn't have. If you'll notice, the fellow on the right is sitting in a saddle, and look at his foot. It is in a stirrup. The Roman does not have this. Okay, and that's not just an artistic convention. The Romans did not have this technology. If you rode a horse in the Roman military, you rode it bareback, and you weren't able to put your feet into stirrups. So this is one of those things that the medieval period actually they had better technology than the Romans did. Some things got better in the Middle Ages. It's really surprising some of the things the Romans didn't have. Okay, so what does this mean? All right, you have a saddle. It helps you to sit on the horse. You have stirrups that you put your feet into, and how that helps to keep you on the horse. It gives you more mobility. Well, what this means is that it's one of those little changes that has a great knock-on effect. All right? It's much easier to fight on horseback now. In the Roman Empire, there was cavalry, but they were always the main backbone of the army was the infantry. Okay, that's where the main action took place. Cavalry were always sort of on the wings, maybe throwing some stuff, but you couldn't fight from horseback because you might get dislodged. It's too easy to knock someone off a horse if you don't have a saddle or stirrups. But now, if you are attached to your horse in this way, you can actually fight from horseback. And then of course there's other technology that comes up. So we've seen mail, better shields. You can breed heavier horses. Okay, and the couched lance is basically you're holding a lance under your arm, so you transfer the kinetic energy from the horse to the rider to the lance. You don't want to get in front of one of them. So over the course of the Middle Ages, the cavalry now becomes the backbone of the army. Infantry doesn't go away, but cavalry becomes much more important. And what this means, it's kind of like the opposite. Remember all the way back in the archaic age of Greece, how you have the infantry is organized into the hoplite phalanx, and this gives common soldiers status? Sort of the opposite thing happens in the High Middle Ages, okay? The cavalry becomes more important. Therefore, the rich become more important because horse ownership is always expensive. I mean, it costs money to raise these things. It costs money to feed them. All this extra equipment costs money, and the time it takes to train to use all of this equipment, you need leisure to be able to do that. So war is now the preserve of the rich, and the status of peasants kind of goes down. Okay, so this is our first part. Stay tuned for part number 2.